Welcome back to the Quake World Championship. We're live from QuakeCon 2023, and we dive deeper into the round of 16 with our second matchup here today. It is going to be RAPHA versus DANDAKING. I am here with Flea and Lethal. Gentlemen, good morning. How are you doing?
Doing well. I mean, I was just here for the first match. Oh, you've already asked me.
All right. And Flea, we know how you're doing. Lethal, how are you doing?
Fabulous as always, mate. Fabulous as always. And to come in with this, well, our first match anyway, with the DANDAKING versus RAPHA. Looking forward to this. I've been saying with DANDAKING in the past, but this is a bloke you do not want to deal with since he's absolutely wide first moment of the day. So I hope RAPHA's ready for him now.
I mean, you know, RAPHA is a very seasoned Quake player throughout many different versions of Quake. He has kind of seen it all, right? And is one of those names that people expect that could come out here and potentially take that championship belt that is sitting up there on stage. So the question will be is, you know, how's RAPHA feeling? How is he going to be able to do? And this will be a great showcase of where RAPHA is at. I mean, I've had a chance to kind of see him practicing back there and getting in the reps. And, you know, he looks like the tried and true RAPHA. But when you're in tournament and in game, right, you try to take it as far as you possibly can in that upper bracket and avoid that lower bracket. But just look at that performance throughout Season 4 of the QPL. There were 2 losses in there, one to Zeneku and another to Maxter. But for the most part, he also walked away with quite a few 3-0s.
Yeah, I mean, RAPHA has had a very solid season, but then again, when does he not, right?
True.
RAPHA has more championship title wins than anyone else in the Quake Pro League. 4 times, Reed. 4 times he's come to hoist that belt over his head. But it's been 2 years. It's been 2 years, right? You always say you can never really bet against RAPHA. He's so solid. He is the GOAT, right? That's what everyone says. But past few championship titles haven't really been going his way. I think there was even like a 5th, 6th place finish in there, which is uncharacteristically low for RAPHA.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is indeed. And, you know, we know him as a very dominant player, very minimal hesitation, one of the strongest work ethics overall.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to see exactly how he's going to do things here. To him, like being on stage here, it's like being at home, so it's going to be very natural for him. But for Dan, you know, he's had some top placements in the past, both in Quake Live and Quake Champions. It's a man you do not want to deal with at the start of the day, as I already mentioned. Very well strung with his combat skills and, of course, his timings around the map and how he just perceives things. He seems to play very confidently, but very fearless as well.
Yeah. Well, let's actually hear from DANDAKING. We sat down with him before QuakeCon started, and let's see what he has to say about this weekend.
My username is DANDAKING, and the esports organization I represent is Spire Peripherals. My username comes from when I first started playing Quake Live. Originally, my nickname was just Dan. I used to play with that for quite some time, and when I created my account, my brother essentially just gave me that nickname as to create an account for me, and it kind of just stuck. I played on it for a while, and yeah, after I won a couple of tournaments, I thought there was no point in changing after that. My favorite champion would be Ranger. Just because he's like the original kind of character from Quake, and I honestly love his ability as well. It's good to reposition or also do damage, and I like to play aggressive, so I think it suits my style. My favorite weapon would be Railgun. I think the way you can play with it, just at long range and do peak damage and, you know, hit people when they're not expecting it, and also just sometimes like the really you know, small little angles that you can get, that kind of makes for really enjoyable gameplay to watch. This is not my first QuakeCon. This is my 4th QuakeCon. So I came in 2010 for Quake Live, and I came top 6. I got knocked out by Dahang. I came in 2017, and I think I came top 16. I got knocked out by Zron. In 2018, we played 2 vs 2, me and Steege, my partner. And this will be my 4th time here, so hopefully I can improve on those results, but I guess we'll find out. I'm very excited to play everyone that's in the competition, honestly. I don't get much opportunity to play against these players because I'm from Australia, so just getting the opportunity to play all of them is going to be a lot of fun. If I get to line up against the other Australian player, Zeneku, I think he's keen for a rematch from our last tournament game. So I'll definitely enjoy playing him, and hopefully I get the chance to honestly play RAPHA because I haven't met him in any tournament previously. So that'd be, I think, a good game as well. Who do I think has the best chance? I think the obvious answer might be RAPHA. He's definitely an amazing player, and he's been to so many QuakeCons. He's got such good experience here. and it's his home turf. He lives 30 minutes from the event, so he doesn't have to deal with any sort of travel or anything like that. But I think my pick is going to be Razy. He's performed extremely well over the last few years, and he's come second in a number of tournaments, and I think he was, just so close to getting the result, and I think one of these times it's got to go his way, so I think this might be his time. I'll give a big shout out to the entire Australian community. They've kind of obviously been cheering me on, and I hopefully can do them proud and win some games tomorrow. And shout out to my partner who let me come here, and shout out to my son, missing him at home, but I can't wait to get back and see him. And Spire obviously just for everything they've done, helping me out, and hopefully I can make everyone proud and smash everyone tomorrow.
DANDAKING set that one up perfectly, right? He's like, hey, I'd like to play RAPHA. He's got a great attitude. He even called out, thinking that Razy might be the one to take it away. That's been a kind of topic of discussion here. But I do love Dan's attitude. I love his approach to things, right? I just want to come. I want to play my game. I love this game. I hope I get to play against all of these, legends. And here he's getting his wish right here for the first game for his round of 16. So. Very interesting.
I love his cheeky confidence. I was talking to him last night, and he was like, oh yeah, that game against Shane, I threw it on purpose in the final 2 minutes because I wanted to go against RAPHA. I did not want to take the second seed. I just wanted to go up against RAPHA.
Did you hear that, Dan?
And then Dan, he's been talking about Zenecu. He's been like, I'm really hoping you get to go up against Zenecu because he wants his rematch, and I'm out for blood as well. We're going to settle who's the best Aussie in the Quake. Right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
The man's cheeky. He's confident. You got to love him.
You got to love it. All right. Well, both players getting ready, getting into the zone. Let's take a look at the picks and bans to determine what is going to go down here in this matchup. It looks like we've got Corrupted Keep, Blood Covenant, and Awoken as our map picks. Who wants to take this one?
I'll make a start here. Ruin's been banned by RAPHA, I assume, so that's not really too much of a surprise at all in the slightest. Slash being banned for Blood Covenant later on. Ranger versus Drog, again, very meta, very standard from what we normally see. Having the Athena versus the Nyx matchup going to Blood Covenant, and we're going to have the Death Knight versus the Visor on Awoken. We've seen quite a bit of Visor, especially in day one. We saw him a few times on Corrupted Keep on Awoken as well, and it's definitely been more of that choice, but we've obviously seen a lot less of the heavier style of champions in comparison, which has also been a hot topic on the circuit. But yeah, it's not the first time. It's not very meta-ish in terms of online performance, but we have seen quite a bit of Visor both on Awoken and Corrupted Keep recently.
Dan was actually talking about that, I think 2 days ago. He was talking specifically about his Visor pick on map like Awoken because he played it yesterday as well, right? And he was talking about like, I know some people say that, the utility isn't quite there because it's a much smaller map to begin with, but he feels like he's have a really good track record with Visor on this map, and he says that, when you're on point and your aim's going well, then just having that side available can really just amplify it even further.
Yeah, that's interesting. And of course, the DK coming out as well. Not even sure we're going to make it to 3 maps, but of course, DANDAKING would love to see that happen. I think RAPHA probably looking to try to close this out as quickly as possible, but the number 2 seed versus the number 15 seed should still bring some excitement here to QuakeCon 2023 this morning. So excited to see this one fire up.
Yeah, I'd probably say even on the first map, Dan could keep it quite close because he is the sort of player who comes out the gate strong. He's extremely confident. He's known for his combat skills. He doesn't care who he's up against. People don't really hesitate too much. He is one of the very few. So, but Blood Covenant's an entirely different story, really, in terms of the potential scoreline.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and we've got Nyx versus Athena, right? So we've got Athena with the grapple hooks, which work really well on more vertical maps,
right,
like Blood Covenant. But then on the other hand, Nyx has got her wall jump. That makes it so easy to traverse, go to bridge to rail and vice versa, rockets to catwalk, right? There's so many jumps that you can do with that passive wall jump. But still, the speed on Athena is so difficult to count out, and Blood Covenant is really a playground for her.
Yep. Well, we're about ready to hop into our first game. Flea, we'll see you back here once things have, the dust has settled, and we're going to jump into our first game here on Corrupted Keep in just a moment. Lethal, you and I can take everyone through this journey. And, I just can't count out anyone that came from groups at this point, right?
No.
I mean, one of the things that we have talked about consistently throughout the QPL is like, holy moly, so much improvement has happened across the board. And, right, even someone who has claimed multiple championships across many Quake titles is still, right, like, I wouldn't say struggling, but finds a good match every once in a while. But we are officially live here in game number 1 of RAPHA versus DANDAKING, looking through the eyes of RAPHA.
Yeah, let's see how he kicks things off here. Or is he trying to get a couple shots in? Pika comes out quite early on to try and get some damage done here, but see what he can do to try and get out of this hole around the LG area. Still has the orb left in his back pocket. The LG battle comes out between the two. It's like I said before, Dan is absolutely no stranger to his combat skills and doesn't care who he's up against. And now he's just backing off a little bit just to see exactly, trying to assess the situation here with, of course, the timings of both items almost in sync here, making that rotation, and is now RAPHA heading towards that heavy.
Yeah, I kind of like it, right? Some confidence coming out there from DANDAKING. Got to be careful, though. Caught with some LG and completely loses his armor stack right there. I think RAPHA knows it and is going to try to force him, he does, into the red room. And knows exactly where he's at. Oh my gosh, lands a massive shotgun blast, but it's not going to be enough as Peeker comes out, and then a rocket. And DANDAKING's very, very low. RAPHA knows this, going to try to equalize it, and does so within a beautiful midair.
Picks up the light as well as the Mega just then, and also taking the red room light, so it's going to cause a little bit of concern here for Dan, depending on his next engagement, how much damage he actually takes, but he's just more focused on getting all the weapons in his arsenal. He's only got the rockets at the moment, but he gets a little bit of damage done, not enough to really time the tide, but he's trying to get a little bit more done as Dan can get out that Peeker. He does get a fair amount of damage though. I think he's done 70 HP and still able to get so much done. I don't know how Darren's still alive throughout the entire engagement.
I mean, a few more hit points, and I think he would have been able to grab that one, but RAPHA playing very intelligently, just kind of putting himself up the side. He did take more damage from that Peeker than I kind of expected, but he still managed to pick up that frag. And look at, after picking up that Mega, his stack just looking super great as DANDAKING is trying to just keep that score line as close as possible. Nice little defensive rocket, forcing RAPHA back here just a bit. And RAPHA does get the jump on him. Another great defensive rocket coming out by DANDAKING, and he certainly seems on this morning, Lethal.
It certainly is indeed, and it always has been, especially yesterday as well, just causing a little bit of an upset. He does get away, but leaves the heavy behind, but you can see RAPHA's just delaying it just a tad in order to throw Dan's timing off a later date. With Mega coming up in the next 15 seconds, actually Dan's directly underneath him, as RAPHA just having a little bit of a scurry around to see what he can find, but hasn't got any info on where Dan could beat, but it's going to be a good read though, but Dan's going to find him first, but it doesn't matter. He catches him. He was very aware of the situation, making it 3-1.
This rocket launcher just kind of sticking out there a little bit. The quick turnaround and a nice little hit on there for frag number 3. It's still pretty early, but he is going to pick up and clean a nice one up there, get some momentum going to that teleporter, and now is just trying to say, can I convert an additional frag off of this one? 4-1 right now, waiting for his opponent, coming out of that teleporter. Doesn't get a chance to dish out any damage, but I like how RAPHA's playing, right? Focusing on kind of control, a lot of map awareness, as we just saw him catching his opponent from around that corner. But it's been said before, right? Many times there's been different players. Hold on. Great orb into the shotgun kill. And, you know, a lot of people have talked about who owns this map, right? We've heard Razy's keep. It's been RAPHA's keep for a while, but you certainly see the comfort level of RAPHA on Corrupted Keep.
Oh, absolutely. And he's coming up with a Peeker once again, but doesn't really get too much done. But RAPHA just been an absolute nuisance here, almost making him fly a little bit from the LG, but got some additional rocket damage there. Just look at the item control. 11 items to the 3 of Dan so far as he cleans them up nicely, making it a 5 frag deficit, which Dan needs to try and contest these items a little bit better in order to give himself a bit more of a boost in this matchup here, but it's been all RAPHA so far since the 2nd minute.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question of, like, how am I going to try to take some control away from RAPHA? Like, RAPHA's playing a great long-range game. We've seen it with the heavy machine gun right here. He is controlling most of our major items. Big old scream. That rocket almost does enough to take him out, but RAPHA staying alive, getting that Mega as well. And just taking a quick look, 7 heavies, 7 megas to the 1 and 2, which means that Dan hasn't been able to grab a major item in the last 2 minutes or so. And he's got to figure out a way to kind of break through that wall that RAPHA's put up and gain some kind of control to try to bring this one back.
Yeah, he's always giving us a positional advantage in every situation. Doesn't take him down there either, or even gets a potential trade, but he's going to try and go for it now on spawn, but seems to be, but he's actually kept him back. Wait for the Mega Man to get it on time. Finish him off with the heavy machine gun. Lovely stuff there. Now making it 9-1, and I get a little bit of an inkling that things could be getting worse here.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great bait there by RAPHA, leaving it up. He could have just grabbed it and barreled towards his opponent, but gives you that little hope, like, oh, the Mega, he didn't grab it, and then you go in for it, you get hit with a rocket, and then the shotgun blast. And, you know, that's the other thing, is that watching RAPHA on the Ranger here, you will consistently see him orb for position into the shotgun, and it's devastating. We've seen it multiple times. There, an orb goes down. That was a little bit unorthodox, but it did get the frag. And right now, RAPHA is just all over the place. There's a heavy finally picked up here by Dan, but is he going to be able to do much with it? Even with the lesser stack, RAPHA still putting out enough damage to keep himself in a good position. Okay, well, the rocket was not enough. DANDAKING hurt, but does manage to get a second frag.
You can see on quite a few occasions as well, Dan is just trying to surprise him with his movement speed and try and create some surprise attacks. So he's left some traps as well, but so far RAPHA hasn't really fallen for many, apart from that initial one with the shoddy from Dan. But now 6 minutes in, 4 minutes left remaining here as Dan able to rejuvenate just a little bit here. Just going back to the items now with 18 items for RAPHA and only 6 for Dan. It could be a little bit too late, of course, now, but still got 4 minutes left to play. But it's going to find him behind with the Pika. Doesn't finish him as of yet, but could just be delaying the inevitable. But looks like RAPHA just going to back away for now, as Dan is going to slowly recover.
I mean, he didn't need the kill, right? That's the thing. It could have been pretty risky going into that choke of the Red Room. He's going to pick it up anyway. Probably not happy that those two rockets, because it was a pretty styled move there with the orb to get past the peaker. But it doesn't, you know, at this point, I think he's just playing to keep that score line as high as possible. You know, doesn't need to be discouraged. Whew, nice double bounce rocket into the mid-air. Second one of the match, by the way. 12-2 now, 10 frags separate these two, and RAPHA's looking really comfortable and quite good here in game number 1.
Yeah, he's looking pretty damn good so far. Already 13-2, his first match on stage, and like I said before, to him it's just like playing at home at this point. And he's getting so much damage done with that heavy machine gun as he picks up the heavy. He's just looking to try and finalize that initial bout, but it looks like it's not to be. Trying to get a little bit cheeky through the window with those rockets earlier. And now just circling back around again. That's fine, they will be able to pin him into that Red Room, but it's like I said before, the damage has already been done. Need to try and find 11 frag to be very highly unlikely. And with the item control which RAPHA has had the entire time, I think there's going to be a lot of talk of what to do in this next map now, 14-2.
I mean, completely just running control. 10 heavies, 20 lights, 13 megas. And you might wonder why RAPHA would have been taking that, but it's really in the mode of just starving his opponent out. If you can't get an armor stack, you're going to be easier to kill. There's been a lot of rocket jumps into momentum to set up for position, but we're really seeing, I think, a RAPHA who is prepared to bring his highest level of skill here to QuakeCon 2023.
Certainly is. Dan's currently bottom middle, just throwing a few rockets out there, just a little bit of map presence, whilst RAPHA now just returning just to pick up that heavy. But look at the stack difference as well. Dan's got a lot on his plate over the next couple of minutes. He can maybe try and keep it as competitive as possible, but yeah, it's dire straits right now, which is just trying to throw a couple of rockets there. A little bit of damage done. He's going to be flying on in with the orb as well, and actually still somehow takes him down, considering the stack advantage.
You know, I think when you're going to do what RAPHA's been doing with the orb into the shotgun, right? You have to expect that is probably not going to work every single time. And in that situation, I think that's exactly what we saw there. But with less than 90 seconds to go, RAPHA can comfortably say, I've got this game number 1. I can just play how I need to. We does have the orb go out, but it is just a bait. Doesn't actually exit on it. And he's going to be probably pretty happy with this initial performance, whereas DANDAKING's got to be wondering, okay, what am I going to need to do for map number 2 on Blood Covenant? Because this one very, very confidently went to RAPHA.
Yeah, it could even be worse, depending on the circumstances here. But with the Knicks, will give him a little bit of leeway. But Dan does get that 5th frag just to get the scoreline a tiny bit closer than it was originally in the first place. But yeah, what a way to start this first map. I'm sure, like Dan probably was hoping that maybe during the first 5 minutes or the first segment of this map, it can maybe turn the tide or try and keep it close. But RAPHA just giving absolutely no way in, and no matter how creative he was trying to be with some of his movement and with his combat skills and just trying to push on in and just trying to create a way to, you know, at least surprise him in somehow in some way, just had absolutely no chance in the slightest. 10 seconds left.
Yeah, and this is definitely going to go RAPHA's way. Obviously, you know, I think if you rewind it all the way back to that initial frag that happened in the Mega Room, he trapped his opponent up on top near the statue, and we'll probably see it in the recap there, but that kind of set the pace for the entirety of the game. RAPHA didn't really let off on that. He is going to have his debut in the round of 16 here on stage in a very convincing fashion, but we're going to go on to game 2, and I'm not super surprised by that result on Corrupted Keep, considering that it has typically been a pretty strong map for RAPHA.
But we've got Blood Covenant next, so it's like pick your poison
right,
at this point compared to what we just saw there, which is unreal. I think we saw like 28 items to 10 or something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous, the item control RAPHA had, but that's what he's been known for, of course, over the years. And so far, if his combat skills complements all the skills he has in the trade, then my goodness, yeah, he's obviously why he's going to be one of the favourites in this competition. But to take Dan down like that so comfortably is still a feat in itself.
Yeah, I think like that frag right there, because they had the one where they traded at the beginning, but that what would have been the third frag of the game was the one that kind of let RAPHA run away with it. And then several of those orb to shotgun combos worked out quite well for him. Didn't go for really anything direct, just more get in a better position and then try to kind of throw your opponent off. And that's exactly what he managed to do throughout the entirety of that matchup. And then look at that, the control itself. 15 megas, 13 heavies versus the 4 and the 6. You know, but again, like that's when you're playing up against a player like RAPHA, that's the tough part. Like, how do you break through? How do you get that control? Well, Blood Covenant's going to mean that he gets to slow it down just a little bit. We'll have to see how RAPHA's going to approach this being on the Athena, but DANDAKING does have the Nyx, right? So a little bit more utility there on a map that will allow him, I think, to play a little bit more at his pace.
Exactly, yeah. And with the Nyx as well, it gives him a bit of room, a bit of space, especially not just the map size, but with Nyx overall, with that get out jail free card. I'm sure he'll be using that quite a lot. Think about the hourglasses the entire time, so he needs to not be too predictable with his positioning and his rotation he makes in order to try and recover that as well. But it's all about the item control. It always has been with that last map and this map. He needs to really try and be a bit more confident with his preparation, maybe get a little bit earlier, maybe trying to assess the situation a bit better in terms of the information he has. And it's going to be quite difficult though, because with the Athena, she's always been really good on Blood Covenant. Nyx is not really not a bad pick either, of course, with the slash already taken out. So we'll have to see what Dan can do here. But I was more thinking that it'll be a closer match on Corrupted Keep, and RAPHA will probably dominate quite hard in this map. But after what we just saw on Corrupted Keep, I'm a little bit worried for Dan going into this one. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I mean, what I kind of worry about here is that you've got the utility of the Nyx, you've got the Ghost Walk, that's kind of, as you mentioned, get out of jail free card. There could be opportunities to use it in a more aggressive manner. That could be a way that he's able to regain some control if, you know, RAPHA goes that way. But the hook can just do so much, right? We saw, even yesterday, some really interesting games where it's like, yes, hook for mobility, but also hook just to confuse your opponent in fights, right? Or to surprise someone coming from a location that you wouldn't necessarily come from. And we've seen that Athena play continue to evolve as she gets more and more popular in the champion pick rotation. But here we are, map number 2, Blood Covenant, and we're following through the eyes of RAPHA.
And already putting a lot of pressure onto Dan as he's picking up that heavy. He's going to delay the Mega quite heavily as well, but also got him flying as well and did so much damage. Mega's still been left, mind you, but you never know. He's probably hoping that Dan's probably made the assumption that he hasn't picked it up yet, and he did make that assumption.
Yeah, he did, and that was just unfortunate to get caught with that LG. In fact, immediately had to pop that Ghost Walk just to not die. And yeah, that's not exactly the way that you want to be using, you know, Nyx on this map, but it is good there because at least he avoided that first frag. Now, you could already see RAPHA. He's going for a heavy control game. He's going to probably try to starve away, keep those lights out of the hands of DANDAKING. He's having no problem traversing around the map, as you'd expect with Athena, but let's see what happens here at the Mega.
Yeah, Dan did say in his interview, but he prefers a rail heavy matchup, so this could be the map for him, as things haven't even got started yet. This is the first minute in. It's been very back and forth. Just keeping him pinned down in that bottom megas. Dan just trying to find a way to get out. Took a little bit of damage there, but Dan does still have a very small stack lead as the heavies come up in the next couple of seconds. RAPHA not going to drop down as of yet, just waiting for him to head towards it, but finds nothing, so we'll get that uncontested. And now he's going to circulate around again with that mega come next in the next couple of seconds, but he's in the position to potentially go for it, but he's actually left it. But this hit him with that 1-2 rails. Going to try and make it a third, but isn't able to, but at least it's done enough damage just to help with the stack situation.
Yeah, and had a great grapple up to the top, but DANDAKING answering back with a real nice rail. You mentioned that he'd love to play that rail game, and now getting an opportunity to do so. So you go back and look at that first moment where RAPHA like stacked 120 damage with that LG and used the Ghost Walk to get out of there, but at this point, actually, I'm like, that was great, because he has been able to run the pace. Now here we've got a Ghost Walk going in for it, seeing if he can pop and maybe surprise RAPHA, but RAPHA is away. He's gone by that point, but does get the hourglasses, giving him a little bit more time there. And RAPHA's now slowed down just a little bit here in minute number 2.
Yeah, he was very aggressive at the beginning to throw the timers off the mega and also do some damage towards the heavy, but he tanked quite a lot just there as Dan's actually gone back around and now heading towards the heavy, which he will be able to grab. And RAPHA sadly doesn't get that first initial rail as he went down those heavy stairs, but we'll find him on that jump pad. But the Tribot did so much damage there. He could get cleaned up in that initial round, but of course he's already recovered enough and using that aggressive Ghost Walk. Picks up the mega. He was a little bit worried, you saw there. He wasn't really too sure about how Dan was going to approach that with the Ghost Walk, but yeah, panicked just slightly, but it's understandable why he fired that rocket on the mega.
It might actually have allowed him to get in position for this heavy, and you know, we've got a pretty good separation between these two, but look at this, RAPHA going in from down below, and he's going to be forced to give it up as Dan actually caught wind of that and put himself in a position that made RAPHA question whether or not he should be there or not. And so far, I'm impressed with how DANDAKING has been handling things so far. Scoreless game here in 3-0, and this has actually been a part of the meta shift that we've seen a lot here on Blood Covenant. We could have a fight here, so we do have the Ghost Walk pop out. And, you know, DANDAKING will probably be completely fine with those exchanges. He does drop down, immediately sees that light in the lower levels is not there, and that's a good indication that, yeah, RAPHA's just trying to just starve you away. Picks up that heavy, gets hit with the rail, answers back, but RAPHA still manages to get it off. He's so very, very low. RAPHA's still going to go for it a second time. Is it going to work out for him? Oh, wow, the shotgun to clean it up, and he's still so low. DANDAKING knows it. He almost got it right there. Lethal, but it did not happen. RAPHA now takes the lead by 2.
Oh, he was so keen on that trade, wasn't he? But it's actually caught him again. Oh, how many times has he been left on 10, 20 HP, RAPHA?
Yeah.
That's so frustrating for Dan. You can see it a little bit now. He's just trying to get that initial trade just to try and help things out, but the direct straight afterwards is just going to make matters worse now. 4-0. Things have started to escalate quite quickly over the last minute.
And it's one of those situations where like, oh, that first frag, that's unfortunate, but then it just compounded, it compounded, and then suddenly it's 4-0. Even Dan kind of looking and saying, I cannot believe that happened. Now he's just trying to figure out, okay, how do I claw my way back in here? Just get on the board. And really, you know, you mentioned that RAPHA's so many times been low, and that's where that hook suddenly comes in, right? Like, yeah. it hasn't stopped RAPHA. He's like, yes, I'm low health, but I'm going to use this opportunity to kind of get some momentum, go in, try to surprise my opponent, and he's committing to these fights right here as along with DANDAKING, but it's playing out in RAPHA's favor now. Currently 6-0, and we haven't even hit the halfway point.
Yeah, considering it was scoreless for the first few minutes now,
yeah.
Things escalate so quickly after he's trying to get those trades, which really should have gone in his favor multiple times, but now at the halfway point, and going to be pretty damn difficult here, especially against the mobility of the Athena now. And RAPHA just going to slowly creep up towards that heavy. Managed to bag it in the end. He's got a huge stack advantage. Of course, it's going to be straight in, but you can hear the Ghost Walk as Dan is trying to get away from down below. But just a matter of time. Could be delayed inevitable here, but that was a good rocket coming out from Dan.
It was very nice rocket, and he needed that one because RAPHA was ready to chase. The blood was in the water, and he was going to play the role of shark. We now at past 5-minute mode, and another great rocket coming up. A huge rail. Dan very, very low. He's got to be careful here. You know how much RAPHA loves to use that heavy machine gun for that long-range damage, so just try to clean up those frags. And Dan's got to be asking himself, okay, how do I break through what seems like an impenetrable shield that RAPHA has put up? You know, he's had some control of this map. Definitely RAPHA with a few more major items under his belt. But really, it's those lights that is hurting him the most, right? Those exchanges that leaves him with no armor stack and then going and finding 0 lights. That's rough.
Yeah, it certainly is. 15 items for RAPHA and only 7 for Dan. It's a little bit better than what we was intended. But LG's been flying so far. We haven't seen too much LG coming up from Dan, but he has been denied that quite a lot quite early on, but it's been finished off again, 7-0, and of course he hasn't taken barely any damage, so he can continue piling on the pressure and continue the aggression as he sees fit. He's directly blowing, mind you, trying to get a couple more with that nail, but with that Ghost will come into play. That will save his bacon just for a little bit longer, but the problem is, again, abusing that verticality, that height advantage that RAPHA has right now.
Yeah, and I mean, RAPHA's hooks have been on point. He's used it in just about every single scenario that you could possibly imagine. And you got to be asking yourself, you know, if you're in DANDAKING's shoes, like, is there anything really I can do? There's a hook up to the RL platform. 3 minutes left to go. RAPHA with a solid 7-0 lead, and DANDAKING just looking to put that first frag on the board.
He certainly is as the LG battle comes out between the two, but RAPHA's going to be backing off straight away, but might as well. He's still got 2 minutes 45 left to play. It's not like he has to do too much now. It's just a matter of time, really, but as you can see, Dan has dropped down instantly from that last scuffle.
Yeah, a little head shake from Dan as well, and I think he's even saying, gosh, Ghostwalk's not really doing for me what I needed to do. And most of the times he's just used it to try to avoid a frag. Does land a nice rail right there. A second one in a row. Where's number 3? The Mega does come up. These two just exchange some long-range blows. Once again, RAPHA just kind of all over this map, even getting some tribal damage there. Now, DANDAKING's been dishing out damage, but hasn't been able to land that killing blow. Here's an opportunity. The Heavy did get back up, and there it is. DANDAKING on the board with 1.
He's hoping he can throw him off a little bit with his strafe ban with that heavy machine gun and just solidify the deal for extra insurance. But even though it cost him, he's still got a couple more minutes left. So it's going to be pretty damn tough right now, even with that stack down that currently has. But putting a better performance in the first few minutes, but things have definitely turned the tide massively during this second half, especially that 3-minute mark where just things went completely out the water there, just trying to go for that trade continuously, which 2 of those times, mind you, it should have happened. Like, don't get me wrong, considering the amount of damage he was outputting with that tri-bolt and the machine gun straight afterwards. But got minute 20 left. Nice little rail there coming out from Dan as just looking from behind, but it's going to prioritise the recovery process instead.
Yeah, and I mean, at this point, there's not much he's going to do. No way to get 6 frags here back onto the clock, considering how much time is on the clock. But RAPHA is going to fairly convincingly take this matchup versus DANDAKING. DANDAKING still in it. He will drop down to the lower bracket, but, you know, RAPHA's going to be pretty confident going into the round of 8, having won this game the way that he did. DANDAKING trying to find maybe 1 more frag to wrap things up. But really, when it comes down to the champ picks, you know, we've said consistently that RAPHA has been very good on the Athena. There's a lot of maps that he's been able to utilize that pick in a very phenomenal way. And this is just another example of that. But 30 seconds left to go. Not much DANDAKING can do other than think about what is going to be coming up next for him in the lower bracket.
Think about what you've done, mate.
Yeah.
Think about what you've done. 15 seconds left. But it's probably a result he anticipated anyway, which is fair enough. And if he was able to even take a map, that would be an upset in itself. Because normally that's where you see the signs of weaknesses with some of these players, don't you? But GG from both these players.
GG.
His second map did go to RAPHA and the series 8-1. And there we have it. RAPHA moves on to the next round of the winners bracket.
Welcome back, Flea, to the desk. Your thoughts on the matchup?
I mean, I think that few people would have expected anything other than a 2-0 in favor of RAPHA, but it was still a very exciting series, right? Map 1, I feel like the ability used from both players was actually extremely efficient, right? Very often you see that one player struggles on Corrupted Keep, but this time there was a lot of value coming from the Peeker, but also RAPHA making consistently good use of that orb of his as well. And I think towards the end of Map 1, DANDAKING was starting to get a lot more lively. I felt, right? He was starting to close the gap a bit.
Definitely.
Of course, it was already done at that point, but still there was more life in him. But then Map 2, DANDAKING started off, I think, phenomenally well, right? After that first engagement, he was on the back foot. RAPHA did so much damage, was in control, and somehow he managed to hold out and survive against RAPHA with pretty much nothing for several minutes on end. And then, Wheat, I heard you scream all the way to the other side, to the green room, like there was that 1 minute where everything fell apart.
Yeah.
And just like that, DANDAKING dropped 3-4 frags in quick succession. It was close though, because there was a moment where RAPHA, I think, was literally 1 HP before going on the bounce pad towards Mega.
Oh,
you know,
it's
like,
just horrendous when you see that, isn't it?
Every Quake player knows that feeling. Like, I know that if I just spit on RAPHA, that he is going to fall or give or what, and just not being able to do it.
Yeah.
You got to also think, like, not only RAPHA, but also Athena tends to be kind of a very dangerous person to try to then chase, because RAPHA at that point was saying, hey, I'm just gonna, like, I know you're gonna come to me, so I'm gonna go after you. And then that set up those 4 frags that just suddenly made it real hard.
And you can see there as well, 42.5% LG. His tracking has been really good this series, and it's been showing a lot across the board. But not only that though, even during the first 3 minutes, Dan had such good defense. It was just those 2 trades he definitely could have had without question, and it just fell short just a little bit both times. It was just so aggravating to watch, and especially for him as well.
Yep. Well played. Congratulations to RAPHA for the win, and DANDAKING is not out yet. He'll be dropping down to the lower bracket. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, it's going to be our 3rd match of the round of 16. And, you know, Wenger may have come out of the regular season as the #1 seed, but this guy is the previous champion. It's going to be Kilson taking on Sparty coming up next. Don't go away. More action live from the floor of QuakeCon 2023 coming up right after this.